to be able to do something effective to prevent violent extremism, you need to know the context first and foremost. And since we are working from a human security, let's say, perspective, that means that we are, in our approach, trying to complement state-centric approaches to security. That's why we call it human security. Now, how do you do that? We think that, we're talking actually about drivers. What drives groups, individuals to take on, let's say, violent extremism actions? We feel that you need to address first and foremost the underlying causes, the root causes, why people resort to this type of agenda. Again, to be able to do that, you need to know the context. So what we do as a group, in the context where we are working, and at the moment we are developing this approach in our own country, the Netherlands, where we're based, in Mali, in Tunisia, in Libya. We're going to start a project in Libya, and in Nigeria. We've also been trying to do this in Nigeria, is that we bring together first and foremost civil society organizations that are working in those high-risk areas within the countries. And that may be geographical areas, but it also may be neighborhoods of big cities, which we're doing, for example, in Tunisia. With these civil society actors, and some come from organized civil society organizations, others more from very loose, not even organizations, but people, civilians that are very concerned about recruitment in their vicinity, about the fact that, for example, people in their neighborhoods, particularly young people, have left the neighborhood or the country to fight in Iraq or Syria. So we bring those people together, and we then, with them, through methodology we have developed in Palestine, which is, I think, quite interesting. We do mind mapping, role play. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but we use creative methods for them to do a risk and threat analysis themselves, and then very much from their own practice, so what's happening in their surroundings. And based on that threat and risk analysis, we ask them then to analyze themselves, right? What could be, who are the actors behind the threats and the risk, and what can be done by themselves to solve it? And what do they need to do to solve it? Is it sufficient to work with others in the communities, or do they need to work with the local municipality, local security actors? Would it be better to work at the national level with whom? Or would they think it's even necessary to reach out to international actors? So, but I think the crux is that people themselves need to do that analysis. So that is the way we approach it. And we are fully aware that we are, again, trying to understand with the people concerned the conditions conducive and the root causes, right? We are not so much working on the pull factors. So we are not so much working ourselves on recruitment, who is that, right? And what can you do about that? Narratives, what is an attractive narrative, whether on or offline? There are other, let's say, practitioners and experts who are good at that, but we try always to complement our approach with bringing in, at later stages when we are working with these civic groups or civil society groups, to then get the perspective of others. So we complement, because we can't know it all. This type of approach needs, let's say, the joint collaborative effort of many. The next step then, what we do is, and that is, I think, important, we always try to provide space for the analysis of the people concerned, to bring that analysis to, let's say, into a discussion with decision makers, right? At local level, sometimes at national level. So that means also that we working with policymakers at those levels. What we do is we at times have benefited from connections already existing with the policymakers of think tanks or of a UN or EU, and then what we have made an effort to do is to bring the civil society and those policymakers in one room and facilitate a discussion based on the analysis of the people. What are the risks? What are the threats? What are the solutions? So that next level, right, to sit with civil society representatives in one room with government or with security actors is very, very challenging at times. And sometimes it didn't work. It just didn't work, even not with the auspices of a UN or a EU. These are, we work in contexts where there is a lot of distrust between the people and policymakers, or let alone security actors. So it requires also a long-term commitment, but also a long-term support from donors. So donors, we always tell donors who are supporting our type of work, you can't get a solution in a one or two off. You need to really invest in the longer term, and you need to ensure that from the civilians or civil society, you have people that can also take on, the work we're doing with them in the first or second encounters we're organizing. So you also need to nurture, let's say, people in civil society, or nurture them, accompany them basically. Nurturing is not the word, accompany them so they can take on this work. And often these need to also be credible persons, people that are trusted by the communities or the families in the communities they're working with, but also of the policymakers. And to find that type of person or group, that is also, it's not automatic that happens, but it is a condition for our approach to have a measure of success. I think defining clearly the problem from, again, a human-centric approach as compared to a state-centric approach, that's the first step. It's complementary, because you also need to, have knowledge, or, if you want to address violent extremism, you have to have knowledge also how states, manage the problem or manage the phenomenon, so to speak. So that's, it's not what we're doing. It's not an alternative, but a complementary approach. I find it really important to stress. But also important to emphasize the fact that human security as a notion, as a practice, is something which has been developing over the past, I would say, 10 years since it was coined by different players, the UN or the Canadian government, and also the people working on humanitarian, let's say, assistance that actually coined the term human security in relation to humanitarian crisis, right? So you can approach human security from different angles, but the way we do it in relation to that prevention of violent radicalization, I think it has a number of advantages also within the UN context. Because for us, human security approach means that you're also addressing the rights, fundamental rights of people. You let people speak out about how they experience security, and it may also criticize security holders, people that decide about security. But you're not coining it immediately as a human rights thing, because human rights, unfortunately, in the context we are working, may be a red flag. I find that really unfortunate, but it is the way it is. And being pragmatic and practical, we, say to the governments we are working with or authorities working with, let's talk about security, and let's talk about the security as perceived and experienced by communities and people. And we've noticed in the countries we are active that this is more acceptable. Instead of, we need to empower the community so they have human rights and so they can, take part in processes leading to the prevention of violent extremism. which other NGOs do or other civil society do. But if you talk about security, governments in our experience say, hey, we open up. We want to discuss this. You have a human security, of course, working group within UN. It's a working group that hasn't, step by step is also trying to make the bridge with the counterterrorism entities within the UN that have launched the Prevention of Violent Extremism Action Plan. But so far, the human security, let's say, coordinating body within the UN has very much focused on humanitarian assistance within high-risk areas that are affected by terrorist groups. But they have not been very much involved in developing the notion and practice the way we do. But there is, we have connections with them, and probably you know that UNDP recently launched also a human security approach in relation to the prevention of violent extremism. I think that is a good start, but I also think that UNDP, hopefully, they will not reinvent the wheel, but connect with a number of groups like ours that have been, working from this, well, in practice.